Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's our literature unit, and we're going to be focusing on the book called The K. And our subtitle for this lesson, or this unit, I should say, is From Blindness to Colorblindness. Now, if you're blind, you can't see anything, right? But if you're colorblind, what does that mean? It means you can't differentiate or tell the difference between some colors. I know I have a friend who's colorblind, and he can kind of tell that it's a dark color and a light color. And some reds he can see, but he can't see green very well or blue. So you can see, but colors aren't as distinct to them as to people who don't have color blindness. And for the record, most of the colorblind people are men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Interesting, huh?
Doesn't include me, but
Nope.
I do know there are several levels of color blindness.
Yes.
Total color blindness where everything's black and white. And as you said, your friend maybe can see some shades of red and stuff like that. And but in this particular case, though, color blindness is not referring to color blindness per se.
No.
We're referring to the word color, which in the past referred to a person of African American descent, okay, or of African descent, black people, basically, colored people. Although that term is kind of dated now, and I even feel uncomfortable using it that way right now because people might get mad or something if I say, "Oh, there's a colored person."
They'll be offended.
Yeah, when I was a kid, an uncle came from Milwaukee to my small town in Iowa, and he asked me if we had any colored people in town. And I thought, what the heck does that mean? I think everybody's like the same kind of color here. They're all white, but I don't see any red people or purple people or blue. I didn't know what he meant. He later said, "Oh, I mean black people." Oh, okay. But nowadays we use African American. I think black is okay. But color blindness, again, means that people don't see color and they don't discriminate against people. So that's what this is all about. And before we begin, we should also mention that the title of our featured book, The K, K here, we're going to stick with that pronunciation because it is in the dictionary, but you will also see the word K, C-A-Y, pronounced as key, which is kind of weird, but some people may pronounce it that way, so be prepared. But in any case, let's begin our lesson right now by reading the entire content, and we'll be right back.
Philip is an American boy living on a Caribbean island with his family because his father works for an oil company there. The year is 1942, and World War II has begun. Philip is excited about the idea of seeing a war, but his mother fears for their safety. She buys 2 tickets for her and Philip so they can sail back to the U.S. During this trip, their ship is attacked and sunk by German submarines. Philip is knocked unconscious as he tries to leave the ship. Hours later, he awakens on a small raft with Timothy, a black West Indian man. Although Timothy saved his life, the two don't get along. Philip resents Timothy because he is strict and tightly controls the drinking water supplies. After some time, they land on a small cay. Philip's eye injuries from the blast continue to get worse, and he eventually goes blind. Philip can't do much, so Timothy builds a shelter and hunts for food. Still, they continue to fight. On one occasion, Philip calls Timothy stupid because he can't read. In return, Timothy slaps Philip's face. After this incident, they decide to make peace and become friends. Philip agrees to help out with more chores, and Timothy makes a special cane for Philip so he can get around the cay better. One day, a fierce storm strikes the cay, and their shelter is blown away by the strong winds. To survive, they hold onto a rope tied around a tree. Timothy uses his body to protect Philip from flying debris. Timothy is gravely wounded and dies. After burying his friend, Philip manages to attract the attention of a plane. He is taken back to the U.S., where his parents find a doctor who is able to restore his sight.
Okay, everybody, let's talk about the K, from blindness to color blindness. Blindness, of course, refers to the state in which you just can't see. Now, Philip is an American boy living on a Caribbean island with his family because his father works for an oil company there. So, of course, we all know about the Caribbean Sea. Some people say Caribbean.
Yeah, I read this article as Caribbean, but like Tom, I grew up saying Caribbean. Once I moved back to New York, I started saying Caribbean because everybody else did, and you just kind of match your pronunciation with the group you travel with, I guess. So we've got different pronunciations for many words, so just hang in there. I recommend picking one that you like and sticking with it.
Yeah, I would just say Caribe. That's how you say it in Spanish. But, of course, not everybody in the Caribbean speaks Spanish. But in any case here, this is a Caribbean island, and that refers to, like Cuba, Jamaica, Hispaniola, which is where Haiti is, and Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, and stuff like that. All of that is in the Caribbean Sea, or Caribbean Sea. And we don't know which island they're on, but he's living on this island. His father works for an oil company there, and the year is 1942, and World War II has begun. I think the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941, right? So that was in December. So basically in 1942, the Americans were joining the party of World War II. World War II began, at least for the Americans, in about 1942, but for everybody else, it had begun many years before that.
Yeah, I know that England, at least, who is an ally of the U.S., wanted America to jump in, and the American president said no. But once the Japanese bombed us and killed people in Hawaii, we got in, and the war ended several years later. So Philip, he's excited about the idea of seeing a war. You can tell that he obviously hasn't experienced it because no one likes war. But his mother fears for their safety. So what does she do? She buys 2 tickets for her and Philip so they can sail back to the U.S. So during this trip, their ship is attacked and sunk by German submarines. In World War II, one of the things that the Germans were very good at was attacking by submarine. Submarines are ships or boats that are under the water. So they would sneak up to ships that were floating on top of the water, and they would bomb them. They would shoot bombs. They would, whatever you do with
torpedoes.
Torpedoes, thank you.
Yes, they would fire torpedoes. And, of course, German submarines.
They were great.
They were great? Well, it depends on what you mean by the word great.
What I mean is technically they were awesome. They had really good technical submarines compared to other people at the time.
They were good at it. And they were also referred to as the U-boats, which I believe is what they're called in German.
Yeah.
So these were German submarines, and their ship was attacked and sunk by German submarines. They probably fired torpedoes at them, and Philip is knocked unconscious as he tries to leave the ship. So he's trying to leave the ship. The ship got sunk. I guess he was trying to get onto a lifeboat or something like that. But as he was trying to leave the ship before it sank, he was knocked unconscious. And if you're unconscious, well, you're just kind of sleeping, sort of, because you've been hit on the head or something like that. But you're not conscious, but you're not dead, but you're not able to respond or see things or talk to people. You're just kind of laying there.
Yeah, and because we don't know what these people who are unconscious hear, or if they hear anything at all. It's interesting. I know my sister was unconscious for a while, but I continued to talk to her. And it was interesting, Tom, because when I would talk about her children, she was in the hospital. When I talk about her children, she would move. So I wonder about unconscious people, what they can hear and what they can't. So he's knocked unconscious as he tries to leave the ship. Hours later, it says in the next paragraph, he awakens on a small raft with Timothy, who is described as a black West Indian man. This verb to awake is a verb, right? You can either use awake to awake or wake up, but you can't say awaken up. So be careful. He awakens, or you could say he wakes up on a small raft. In my opinion, I think awake is a little bit more formal, a little bit better if you're writing something. But we use both. You can use both. And he's on what we're calling a small raft. A raft is a kind of boat, but it's very small. And typically they use long pieces of wood that are tied together. Or nowadays, we have plastic, and so they're made out of something like rubber, that floats on top of the water. Have you ever been in a raft?
Yeah, I think so.
I have to.
Not because the ship sank or something.
No, I was playing in a river.
You can, play in those boats as well. But in any case, remember, Philip was knocked unconscious, and then he woke up later. He awoke, and he was with Timothy, who's a black West Indian man. So here, we should say that the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico and places like that is oftentimes referred to as the West Indies, as opposed to the East Indies, which is basically Southeast Asia. But that was for European reference, okay? I don't think they really refer to these like that anymore, but at the time, the West Indies referred to basically anything in the Caribbean Sea. And so we've got Timothy there. He's a black man. And although Timothy saved his life, the two don't get along. So yes, indeed, Philip was knocked unconscious. They got into this raft, and Timothy did save his life, but well, the boy, I guess, doesn't like him, and they don't get along. If you don't get along with somebody, that means you just have a hard time working together with a certain person or being in the same room with that person. Sometimes this does happen.
It does. I could say you just don't like each other. So you don't get along. You don't like each other. Sometimes it happens at work. But you got to get over it because at work you have to cooperate with people. Well, Philip resents Timothy because he is strict and tightly controls the water that they have that they took from the ship. And drinking water is everything as you're trying to survive. If you resent somebody, you're angry with them. You feel like they've done something that is wrong, and you just kind of want to hit them, actually. Yeah. So he resents the fact. My sister would often resent the fact, I was the oldest sister, she would resent the fact that I got to go shopping with Mom more on Saturday. But it's because I did my job. I did the chores and my sister didn't. So they're kind of angry with you. They're upset that something has happened they don't think is fair, right?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of people ask me, don't you resent your brothers or don't you resent your parents because they always give you your brother's clothes and your brother's bicycles instead of giving you new clothes and a new bicycle? But I said, well, no, actually, I don't mind my brother's clothes. I don't mind his bicycle. I do not resent my parents.
The term we use for clothes and toys that are passed down from an older child to a younger child, it's called hand-me-down. And it's hand-me-down. And if you can make it plural, you can say, I don't want your hand-me-downs. And since I was the oldest daughter, I had all the new clothes. And my sisters would sometimes say that, although my mom bought them new stuff too.
You got to be fair as a parent, of course. Yeah. And so in any case, yes, indeed, he still resents Timothy because Timothy is strict, which means he's got a lot of rules and he doesn't let the rules break at all.
No.
And he's also tightly controlling the drinking water supplies. Of course, Philip is a kid. He doesn't understand these things, but Timothy has to do these things. Otherwise, they're not going to survive. Hopefully, Philip will learn his lesson later. But hey, I think we've talked enough here for now. I think we're going to turn things over now to our Chinese teacher, but stay tuned. We'll be right back.
大家好，欢迎收听 English Digest， 我是 Alice。我们今天要阅读的文章是 Unit 14文学单元的第一天课程。今天的文章要介绍 The K 这本小说。第一段说明主角是个美国小男孩，因为他的母亲害怕受到第二次世界大战的波及，决定搭船回美国。没想到这艘船在中途被德国的潜水艇击中而沉没。我们看到第一段第一句的前半部分 Philip is an American boy living on a Caribbean island with his family. 菲利是一名与家人住在某座加勒比海岛屿上的美国男孩。本句使用了关系代名词省略的分词结构。原来的句子是 Philip is an American boy who lives on a Caribbean island with his family. 冠带 who 在所接的形容词子句里当作主词，所以 who 省略后，后面的动词要变化。如果是主动的话，动词就变成 VING。所以这句的 who 省略后 lives 就变成 living。如果是被动的话，冠带后的 be 动词和冠带一起省略，只留下 VPP。例如课文最后一段的第4句 To survive, they hold on to a rope tied around a tree. 为了存活下来，他们紧紧抓住一条绑在树上的绳索。原来的句子是 To survive, they hold on to a rope which is tied around a tree. 冠带 which 在本句中当主格省略，因为后面的动词是被动，所以 which 和 is 一起省略，只留下 VPP tied。文章的第2段提到 Philip 在船难时被急昏，醒来后发现自己和一名黑人男子 Timothy 在一艘竹筏上，后来2人漂流到一座岛上，但是他们相处的并不融洽。我们看到第2段的第1句 Hours later, he awakens on a small raft with Timothy, a black West Indian man. 几个小时后，他在一只小木筏上醒来，木筏上还有一位名叫提蒙西的西印度群岛黑人男子。本句有一个字 awaken 可以当不及物动词，相当于 wake up 是醒来的意思。例如 Several hours after the operation, the patient finally awakened. 病人在手术后的数个小时总算醒过来了。Awaken 也可以当及物动词，相当于 wake somebody up 是唤醒某人的意思。例如 The baby was awakened by a loud noise and started to cry. 这个婴儿被巨大的声响唤醒，然后开始哭了。另外 awaken 当及物动词的时候，还有唤起某事物的意思。例如 awaken one's curiosity 就是指唤起某人的好奇心，而片语 awaken somebody to something 就是指使某人意识到某事物，相当于 alert somebody to something。例如 We must awaken more people to the dangers of global warming. 我们必须使更多人意识到全球暖化的危险。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We've been talking about The K, a novel that we're focusing on for our literature unit. We got down to kind of the middle of the second paragraph. We talked about how Timothy and Philip end up on this island alone together, and Timothy has saved Philip's life, but the two just don't like each other. They don't get along. And Philip resents Timothy because he's kind of bossy. I think he's kind of telling Timothy when he can drink water and when he can't. And after some time, they're on that small K, that little island, and Philip's eye injuries from the blast from that German submarine continue to get worse. So when they shot that submarine at his boat, it somehow hurt his eye at that time, but it just continued to get worse. And eventually means after some time goes by, he actually goes blind.
The blast or the explosion caused him injuries, eye injuries, so he eventually goes blind, which means he can't see at all. And Philip can't do much, so Timothy builds a shelter and hunts for food. So, of course, if you're blind for the first time in your life, you probably are pretty helpless until eventually you learn how to do certain things and can become somewhat independent. But at first, he was pretty helpless, so therefore Timothy had to pretty much do everything, and that included building a shelter, okay? A shelter is some kind of structure that protects you from weather systems like storms or maybe a thunderstorm or a blizzard or something like that.
Right. So there they are in this little place with the shelter. I've been in a shelter before. Kind of when a big storm comes by, you want to get out of the rain. So they build the shelter, and Timothy, of course, is the one who can see, and he starts hunting for food. But they still continue to fight. On one occasion, Philip calls Timothy stupid, which is so rude. He calls Timothy stupid because Timothy can't read. And in return, Timothy slaps Philip's face. In return just means in exchange for something. Someone does something to you, and you do something back. Or it can be positive, too. Someone gave me flowers. In return, I gave them chocolate. Something like that.
As a response, as an answer. And, of course, somebody who can't read is referred to as illiterate.
Right.
Okay, so Timothy is illiterate. He can't read. And Philip kind of calls him stupid. You can't read? How can you be so stupid?
So mean.
And Timothy is pretty understandably upset about that, so he slaps his face. That means you just hit somebody with your hand.
With an open hand.
With an open hand, that's right. Wham! Okay, well, after this incident, they decide to make peace and become friends. So this is an incident. Of course, they were probably pretty upset and pretty riled up at this incident. An incident is just something that happens, usually something severe, something violent, for example. The 228 incident, as it's oftentimes referred to here in Taiwan. The Mei Li Dao incident, which took place down south. And those are some incidents. So in this particular case, they had this altercation, this little conflict. But then they decided, hey, we still have to work together. We need to survive. So they make peace. If you make peace with someone or something, that means you decide that you're not going to fight anymore. You just say, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Let's just move on with our lives.
From now on, we'll be friends. So Philip agrees to help out with more chores. When you see the word chores, it refers to household things you have to do, like doing the dishes, vacuuming the carpet, cleaning the bathroom, doing the laundry. Usually when kids are growing up, at least in America, their parents will give them chores to do. And if they do their chores, they might get some money to spend for the week called an allowance. So Philip, even though he's blind, agrees to help with some of the chores. Timothy makes a special cane for Philip so he can get around the cave better. If you've seen blind people, you'll often see them with those canes that they tap on the ground to help them know where they're going, to see if anything's ahead of them. Canes are usually made out of some hollow material like bamboo or sugar cane. Yeah.
And you hold it with your hand.
Yeah.
The one that kind of goes under your arm if you break your leg, that's called a crutch.
Oh, yeah.
C-R-U-T-C-H. But if it's something that elderly people use to help them walk and they just hold it with their hand, that's a cane. And, of course, blind people use canes as well. So Philip has a cane that was made by Timothy, and Philip is more easily able to get around the quay. Now, one day, a fierce storm strikes the quay, and their shelter is blown away by the strong winds. So this is maybe a hurricane. Who knows? It's a fierce storm, which means it's very intense with lots of wind and lots of rain and stuff like that. It is intense. It is ferocious. And, of course, they lost their shelter. It was blown away by the strong winds. The winds just blew it out into the ocean.
I wanted to mention, Tom, you said it might have been a hurricane. Hurricane, cyclone, and typhoon are all the same. We use different terms based on what part of the world they happen in. So if we have a typhoon in America, we don't call it a typhoon, we call it a hurricane. So be careful with that. I've heard some people, think they're different things. They're not. They're the same thing. You can't say you had a hurricane in Taiwan.
No.
You can't say you had a cyclone in Taiwan. We have typhoons. So to survive, what they did is they tied a rope around a tree and then hung on to that rope. Timothy, who is a good guy, it sounds like, uses his body to protect Philip from flying debris. This is a weird word, again, guys, because it's French, and those French love to not pronounce that last consonant. So don't say debris. That's bad. Debris. Debris is scattered things that have been destroyed or wrecked, just little pieces of what remains, debris.
That's something you have to watch out during typhoons here.
Yeah.
Watch out for flying debris during typhoons. And Timothy is gravely wounded. Gravely here means very, very seriously wounded. It doesn't mean he's fatally wounded just yet, but he's seriously wounded, but eventually dies. So I guess you could also say that he was fatally wounded.
You could, yeah.
And after burying his friend, Philip manages to attract the attention of a plane. So he does bury his friend Timothy. They became friends later on, despite their racial differences. And then Philip is taken back to the U.S., where his parents find a doctor who is able to restore his sight.
Right.
And here, the last word we're going to talk about today, restore, that means just to bring back something, return something to its original condition.
Yeah, a lot of people like to buy old homes and restore them. That's not when you just, refurbish or redecorate your apartment. No, you're actually buying a home that maybe is 200 or 300 years old, and you want to make it look like it did back then. So you try to put it back into the condition it was originally, restore. Some people would restore furniture. My mom did that. She would buy old pieces of furniture that didn't look very good, and she'd sand it and paint it and put varnish on it, all those things, to restore something.
Yeah, I'm often disappointed that a lot of old farmhouses in Taiwan are not restored. They're just simply torn down, and a 20-story apartment complex goes up in its place.
Yeah, I love those old buildings.
I guess people need to have a place to live, but still.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of tragic. But in any case, yes, his sight is restored, and that's basically how the book ends. Next time, we're going to talk about the author himself. But right now, we're going to say goodbye after we hear from our Chinese teacher.
我们接着看到第二段第5句的后半部分。He eventually goes blind. 他最后失明了。动词 go 在本句是连缀动词，后面搭配形容词而不是副词，有变得怎么怎么样的意思。例如 go crazy 发疯， go bankrupt 破产， become get turn, grow 或是 fall 也都可以当连缀动词，后面接形容词都有变得或是变成的意思。例如 get mad 变生气， turn red 变红， grow old 变老， fall asleep 睡着， fall ill 生病。文章的最后一段提到 Philip 和 Timothy 最后互相了解，和谐共处。但是有一天，一场暴风雨来临， Timothy 为了保护 Philip 而牺牲了自己的生命。我们看到最后一段的倒数第3句 Timothy is gravely wounded and dies. 提蒙西身受重伤，然后去世了。副词 gravely 有非常地、严重地、严肃地的意思，相当于 seriously。例如 The local residents are gravely concerned about the construction of the landfill nearby. 当地居民非常担心附近垃圾掩埋场的建造。另外 grave 当名詞的時候有墳墓、墓穴的意思。片語 from cradle to grave. Cradle, C-R-A-D-L-E, 搖籃。從搖籃到墳墓，也就是指從生到死，一生的意思。以上就是今天的課程，謝謝收聽。
That's it for today. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again next time when we talk about the author of The K. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
See ya.